Hey folks, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and today we're on the Oregon Trail. No, not that weird little card game that came out recently. No, we're talking about a new dice drafting game called Pioneer Days from Tasty Minstrel Games, done by Matthew Dunstan and Chris Marling. This was something that caught my eye literally just because of what it was about. You know, Oregon Trail, dice drafting, mitigatable disasters. Okay, sounds interesting. And also the designer's name. You know, he's been a bit hit and miss, but he has done some games that I consider to be fantastic, like Elysium, for example. So I thought, okay, we'll give this one a go. Alternatively, I also like the dice drafting aspect in a lot of games, but with the dice drafting games I've got, like, say, Seasons, for example, you can see it there, right there. You know, most of these dice drafting games I've got are more medium to heavyweight style ones, so you can't teach them as easy as gateway games, and some of the ones that are gateway level, like say Nations the Dice Game, Discoveries, and one or two others I can think of, La Granja, No Siesta. Yeah, they're okay, but none of them have really grabbed me as much. So I want a light dice drafting game that has a little bit of depth to it, but I could teach really quickly, and we can get done in less than 90 minutes, preferably in an hour. Can this one do it? We shall see. Pioneer Days is a game where you are on the Oregon Trail. You are visiting towns and you are attempting to, no surprise, collect the most victory points.
Of course!
And you do this by picking up various supplies such as medicine, wood and cattle, as well as trying to gain silver wherever possible, recruit townsfolk to your cause, and help out local townsfolk by giving them those supplies. Now that all sounds well and good and sounds like a nice, simple, charming little game. Except that when you're on the Oregon Trail, things don't quite go according to plan very often, and you have to mitigate these disasters. Famine, raids, storms, and disease. And all four of these will happen during the game, sometimes multiple times, but they happen at different points. And you can see how close they are to happening, and the dice drafting phase influences which ones will happen first. So you have to kind of mitigate the losses, or prepare for them, or just take the hit and move on. You decide which battles you're going to fight and which ones you're just going to let hammer you. But throughout the game, as well as mitigating that, you need to choose the correct dice, get equipment, get gold tokens, and throughout all this, it's mainly draft the dice, get your stuff, use it, or keep it for the townsfolk at the end of each round. That's pretty much the crux of the game. It's a fairly simple, light affair in terms of rules. And I gotta admit, the graphic design on this is really good. I love the way that the dice symbols, are clearly laid out on the board to say whether they get you this much income, whether they get you this particular townsfolk, and the rules in the book clearly explain what each symbol does. It's a step-by-step process. Very good graphic design in this one, I have to say. The only thing I'm a little bit annoyed with when it comes to the components is the score track. The score track's a bit annoyingly, a bit unwieldy, because you have these little coaches that you move along this point track, and it looks thematic, yeah, it looks the part, but those things are a bit hard to move. They're four colours, poorly chosen colours. I mean, you got what, like brown, black, slightly white, and slightly beige, or something like that. Really weird colours for scoring markers, and other than there's no other way for you to tell which player is which. You have to remember which one you are. So nobody's got like a player board with a colour associated with it. You've got a player board for your character and your special powers, but you don't have something to say, oh yeah, I'm the brown one. That's a bit of an annoyance, and why couldn't they have just simply gone like, red, blue, green, yellow? I mean, okay, yes, you've got to think about colour blindness, but would it have killed them to, put like maybe markers on it? That just seems a little bit of a weird misstep, but a minor niggle. Otherwise, the cards are pretty good. They're good quality. The dice are really cool. You've got unique faces. They're multicolored. They look cool. You've got two cloth bags. You've got the boards. It's very nicely and very sort of thick, like wooden tile, well not wooden, thick cardboard tiles, very much in the same vein that Tasty Minstrel Games kind of do. I mean, another example, Colosseum, you can't see it, it's slightly out of shot, but, they did the reprint of that and they used similar sort of thick cardboard for those as well. So it's good production quality, just one or two missteps. The second one being that the text on some of those cards is a little bit small. You can read the abilities fine, but to read the bit what victory points they give you, and also to read this at a distance, can throw off a few players. So minor little niggles like that, but generally good component quality, and the artwork is, you know, semi-light and cutesy. It's decent, you know, nothing to sing home about, but, you know, it all looks decent, even though I gotta admit that lady there is a little bit creepy. So, that one, I don't know if you can see her that well, probably not with the camera focus, but yeah, that one on the left creeps me out a little bit, I don't know why. So, yeah, all that aside, playing and teaching the game. Teaching the game actually does not take very long, you know, it's about what, like 15 minutes to teach this game, max? And it plays up to 4 players, so it learned the proper thing and not introducing the 5th player for no reason. It scales mainly by the dice. That's pretty much how it scales, and how many equipment tiles are out. There's no weird 2-player variant, there's no, you know, obscure, you know, scaling in or anything like that. It's just simply put a few more tiles out, put a few more dice out, that's pretty much it. Otherwise it's 2, 3, 4 players play in similar ways. Obviously with a little bit more interaction in, you know, what dice are going to get picked, and also options for what dice are available to pick each round. Now the dice drafting, very straightforward. You choose a dice, you use it for one of 3 actions: income, recruit a townsfolk, or the action on the die. The Jester Hat is a wild, and if you have equipment that has a symbol on it, they trigger, give you extra stuff. Very simple to explain, easy to do. If you've got AP people playing though, yeah, send them away. You should take this as a lightish game. And if you are one of these people that doesn't think about their turn before it gets round to you, go play another game. Please, seriously, you should be able to have a turn and a backup choice by the time it gets round to you. Even in a 4-player game, where you've got 5 dice and, you know, three of them are going to get taken before it's your turn. It's like, no, you can think about your turn before it gets round to you, and you ideally should. There are 2 aspects to this game that really sing to me. One, dice drafting in general is a mechanic I like. I like rolling dice, seeing how they change each round, and then deciding which ones I want to pick. Pulsar that's out of sight, you know, uses a simple dice drafting mechanism for a point salad. Love it. Seasons, you roll those big chunky boulder dice and then you draft them out. Love it. You know, Lagrania, you roll dice and draft as well. I like dice drafting as a mechanic, full stop. I just really like it. You know, tactical, ever-changing, works great. You know, you can have really obscure rounds, or you can have standard. Entirely depends how the dice roll, and you've got to adapt. I like that tactical nature from dice drafting. The other thing I like is these disasters. They kind of are the crux of the game. Now, you might think this bears a little bit of similarity to an old Stefan Feld game called In the Year of the Dragon. This is a, like, bleh. Yeah, I hate the game, but it's a bone-dry Euro that has you mitigating these disasters that you know when each one's going to happen. They're set in stone, and you're basically just getting victory points, but you're trying to essentially build up your little town, your Japanese town or something like that, in order to mitigate all the disasters and come out on top. That one takes a while to play. It is super punishing. I don't like that one at all. This one takes that concept of you've got these disasters, but lightens up a bit, makes it more enjoyable, because you don't exactly know when they're going to happen, but you can influence when they might. Because the die that you leave behind, the colour dictates which of the disaster tracks shifts up a notch. If you leave a black one, they all shift up a notch, so you can make them happen like all at once. And because you have that choice, when you're drafting the dice, you're thinking, oh, well, I want to take that equipment, but if I take that one, that means likely they're going to take that, which means I'm left with a yellow die. That means the famine's going to come along. I don't have enough money to pay for my cattle. What am I going to do? And it influences your decision. But you can prepare for that. You think, well, that is getting dangerously close to hitting us with disease in a minute with the green dye. I better make certain I've got some medicine. But then once the thing has passed, like you've just had a rage, it's like, yeah, you know what, I can hoard a bit of silver because I don't have to worry about it getting nicked in the near future. So you've got a little bit of an emphasis to plan, and it's not too difficult to meet the requirements of these disasters. However, trying to meet all of them might hinder your ability to score a lot of points, because the more that you're having to prepare for the disasters, the less you're giving to townsfolk. The townsfolk want you to give them things like wood, medicine, cattle, and gold tokens and things like that in order to get victory points. Problem is, the more of those townsfolk you satisfy, the less supplies you have to mitigate the disasters, so you have to have a little bit of a balancing act. You've got multiple paths to victory, always a good thing. Do you want to collect a bunch of cattle and get victory points every round? Do you want to hoard gold tokens? Are you going to have tons of wagons? Are you going to have loads of townsfolk? And each of the townsfolk has not only a special power, which is either instant or ongoing, But it also gives you a victory point path to aim for, like 1 victory point per cattle, 1 per townsfolk, 1 per medicine. And they do repeat, there's only so many different ones, but you can stack them up. So the last game I played with 3 friends, I had 3 townsfolk, and they all said victory points for large wagons. So you can buy small and large ones. So I got 3 of them, got 3 large wagons, kept them intact, and they generated something like, actually I had 4. I had 1 at the very end as well. So each one was generating me 8 points for each townsfolk. So I got 24 points, which is quite sizable for 3 townsfolk giving me 2 points for each large wagon. It works quite well. You can mix and match, you can balance it out so you don't just focus on one thing, but you can put your eggs in one basket, and that's entirely up to you. A friend of mine had a massive beef market where he was getting cattle constantly. The only reason he didn't do much better is because he was first game, he didn't quite realise that maybe he should have gone for VPs for cattle townsfolk. Had he done so, I think he would have scored highly and probably beaten me easily. But it was funny to watch him just focus on the beef, and one person focused on having a horde of minions, of townsfolk after them, but of course they need all the medicine. The townsfolk themselves, good amount of variety in powers, not as much with the victory points, but enough to keep it fresh. And there's a good variety in townsfolk, period. You've got, I think, 5 or 6 different sets of 12. I think they go from A to E, so A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, so I think 5 sets of 12, maybe 6, I can't remember. But you've got a lot of these cards. And what you do is you get 2 sets that are lettered, and you shuffle them together. So you could pick A and D, or C and E, or B and A, whatever. And you shuffle the 2 sets, that's what you use in the game. So you've got a good variety because they're all different, they're all unique townsfolk. They might give you similar victory conditions, but they are all unique townsfolk, and you just shuffle the 2 sets together and go. So each game feels very different based on victory conditions and what those cards do. A and B might be very simplistic abilities and mostly about resource gathering. Set D might be more about hindering other players. Set E might have more complex abilities for those who have gotten used to this game. So there's a lot of different ways that you can have this game go about. And for something that is a light dice drafting game, that's pretty good going, I have to admit. The theme with the whole Oregon Trail and being a kind of western it's there. I mean, these disasters happened in that time, and you got the wagons. Everybody looks like somebody from the Western period, and you got gunslingers and stuff like that. But I mean, you could put pretty much any theme on there. I feel it's not like it's tacked on, but don't expect this to be like a wonderfully thematic experience. However, people do get into the theme of this one. They start making Western references. They start talking like cowboys and, making, doing weird stuff like having beef markets and medicine all over the place and, coping with the various disasters. So the theme is there, just not stupidly strong. Now, without sounding like a broken record, let's get on to time and player count. This goes from 2 to 4 players, and as I mentioned, it scales fine. It doesn't really feel too much different with 2, 3, and 4, other than the amount of choices you have with the dice and how long you have to wait before it gets back around to your turn. I enjoy playing this with 2, 3, or 4 players. However, as I mentioned earlier, if there's an AP player in your group or someone who doesn't think about what their turn's going to be before it gets round to them, and then overanalyzes everything, you might want them to scoot aside because they're taking the game too seriously. You really should be able to think of your action before it gets round to your die. Of course, yeah, if you've literally just rolled them and you're the first turn, yeah, okay, that's understandable. But if you're third or last in line of a group of 4, you've had plenty of time to look at those dice and decide what it is you need to do. And you've got a priority. I desperately need money, desperately need medicine, I desperately want that townsfolk. So you see the dice and you go, good, I want that die. But I could also do a medicine, so if that die gets taken, I'll take that one. Good, there's your turn. And when people do get into that same mindset, the turns do go pretty quickly. And the game does dictate 45 to 75 minutes on the box. Yeah, that's wishful thinking. Now, 45 minutes with 2 players is doable, but again, they've got to think about what they're doing. But even 45 minutes with the setup and takedown, because you've got to set up the cards, you've got to deal out the towns, you've got to do the dice and that, not quite 45 minutes. But I would say you should be able to get a game of this done in 60 to 90 minutes without too much trouble. If it takes longer than 90 minutes, you are playing a 4-player game, it is probably your first game, and you have slow players. It should not take more than 90 minutes. There's no way it should. An hour is about a decent length for this sort of game and can easily be achievable with 2. If you've been playing this game loads, and I have no doubt that maybe you could get it down to 45 minutes, but do not expect your first couple of games to be 45 minutes. Ain't gonna happen. So with this one, I'm torn as to what I want to review it as. What rating do I want to give it? I'm torn between 8 and 9. There are some graphic design issues and that scoreboard, and one of the things that I think would push it down to an 8. But then I'm thinking 9 because I do enjoy this one. I want to play it more. Friends of mine have really enjoyed this. It is very streamlined. The rules are easy to explain. The rulebook is decent. It explains everything crystal clear. The design of it is good. The look of it is good, minus those 1 or 2 graphic design issues. And it is a guaranteed, near guaranteed, less than 90-minute game, and potentially as low as 60 minutes if you have people who know what they're doing. So, yeah, 8 or 9, 8 or 9. On a personal level, I think for the time being, I'm going as high as 9. I think it's a solid, well-designed game and definitely deserves a look. It'll be interesting to see how well this fares out maybe in a year's time. So, with the segment I do on the podcast for one more game, maybe this would be a good one to revisit in a year's time to see whether it still has that same impact it does now. But certainly I think if you're a fan of dice drafting games and you want one that is streamlined, easy to teach, easy to play, but with some good hidden depth and can cater for 2, 3 or 4 players either way, Pioneer Days. I can recommend it, definitely one to check out. So that's it for another Broken Meeple review. See you at the end of the Oregon Trail, and even if I'm somewhat afflicted by disease, I'm broke, a bit wet from the storm, and kind of starving, still only a game, so just take it on the chin. Okay, see you next time, and take care.